You're watching Fairfield Public Access TV, and this is Opening Fairfield Doors with Susan Kessel and Connie Boyer. And today's guest is Shawn O'Sullivan, and we're outside on this wonderful wintry day. It's probably close to 60 degrees, so we're out here with no coats. It's really great. And we're at 105 South 3rd in this historical building. So Shawn, why don't you tell us a little bit about this building today?
Well, this building was in our backyard. We live right next door here.
Oh.
And
this is home away from home.
yes, and a big commute to work. When we moved in, we always thought that we would like to get the little home behind our house here. And it was covered with shingles and dead trees and things like that. So when we bought it, we had the shingles removed, and we were told by Mark Schaefer, who's the head of the Historic Society here, and John Littman, that this is probably one of the oldest houses in Fairfield. So we took the great undertaking of making it historical, or keeping it historical, by taking everything that could be left intact and repairing everything else. So it was a real labor of love here to restore it to its proper value as it was about 150 years ago.
150 years ago. That's quite a way. So what was the original? Was this always a home, or?
It was always a home. Actually, it was originally on the corner here, and then at the turn of the century, they moved it back here and built the house on the corner. And then they had additions, little additions that they added on over time. But the original house is somewhere in the 1840s. So we were, when we did some of the renovations, we did unearth some artifacts that help authenticate that. There was a book inside one of the walls that's dated from 1854, and there's a mason jar that had coal in it from heating the house. That's from 1858, I believe, or 1848, something like that.
Wow. Maybe we should. Maybe we should be ripping out the walls in our house.
No gems. There were no gems, though.
No gems. Oh gosh. Well, that's interesting. Any other little things that you found?
We found some type of a metal thing that ladies used to pull their corset thing or whatever, and an old stockings in the wall and things like that. So. And a medicine
bottle. To get rid of those things.
Hide that.
I don't think they were using that for insulation.
We found a medicine jar that had some dissolved white powder in it, and that's from the turn of the century as well. So, but I think most of the things that are more telling about the house are the wallpaper, the floor, the way that the lath and the plaster were applied. Mark Schaefer, who really went through the house almost daily when we were doing the renovations, was just in awe of all the history that's in the house here.
So did you totally rip out the walls and put new wallboard up and that kind of thing? Wherever
it was needed, we did, and for the most part, it was needed everywhere. But the foundation was weak, so that made a lot of the ceilings settle or bowed. So we took out the ceilings. A lot of the walls had a lot of damage, so we repaired that. But the nice thing is that the framework around the windows is intact from the 1840s, as well as the floor, with the exception of the showroom floor. But we kept all the original flooring, and that was a major task in itself.
So this houses your business, yes. Earth and Sea Gems, correct?
Yes.
And you and your wife, Marion, work here on a
yes.
daily basis. And so I guess before we go in, maybe if you can tell us just in a little snapshot about your business, what exactly you do, and then we'll go in and we'll explore that a little bit more.
Okay. This is a business that my wife and I started here in Fairfield when we moved here in 1987. And it's evolved over the years since we've been here, but most of the business revolves around wholesaling to other jewelers and other gem dealers. We also have a clientele that we service here, whether it's engagement rings or diamonds or colored stones or anything of that nature. We help people out that way.
Okay.
Sounds really interesting, and I should mention that we're not advertising. We're here to interview you and learn about you and what you do. So. Well, we've moved inside this historical house, and Shawn is I should mention, is our #1 Santa's helper. And what I mean by that is we are all on the Christmas committee for the chamber, and so we've gotten to know Shawn through that. And he organizes the Santas for the Santa house, and he does it himself too. You get to be Santa once in a while.
I like to do the initial one where we parade around the square a few times, and have the huge crowds there.
So you're active in our Fairfield community. So that's great. So thank you on behalf of everyone.
And the elf too.
And the elf too. That's right. I can't forget that.
He does make surprise visits every now and then. He came to our house one Christmas Eve. It was so sweet because it was just the girls and Bob and I, and it was a surprise visit. No, it was just
That wasn't
really
me.
made it.
That was
Yes?
Santa.
Oh yes, I know, but it was really wonderful because it was a surprise and really lifted us up. It was a lot of fun.
So we're here today to talk about what Santa's helper does in his off hours.
There you go.
Well, what I do in my off hours is I play with rocks and gems.
Sounds like fun to me.
So how did you get started? Let's go way back. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Philadelphia, in the suburbs of Philadelphia, and with a lot of brothers and sisters. And my parents.
How many is a lot?
5 sisters and 2 other brothers. I have a twin brother.
You have a twin brother?
I have a twin brother
I didn't know that.
who is also in this business.
No kidding. Does he look like you?
Exactly like me.
Oh dear.
identical
Are
twin?
you really you?
Well, see, we're learning something. We didn't know this.
Yes.
I didn't know that at all. Gosh, that's neat.
So my father was a gem wholesaler, and my mother worked in retail jewelry. So it was, definitely in the blood. So my high school days, I can remember, carrying my father's bag into the jewelry stores and him talking to the salespeople and selling things that way. And when I finished school, I wanted to focus on something like this, and I took it a step further. I went to jewelry school and started my own jewelry business that way.
So when you were little, did you go out in the gravel and look for food school? Shiny rocks, pretty rocks?
I think
like
that,
all the rest of us did?
He knew better.
Right.
We didn't.
No, I think that's just a primal thing that most people, when they're looking in the ground, they find some pebble. That's a very natural, spontaneous thing to grab something and kind of be fascinated by it.
Well, I know I did that. And Susan's grandfather, right,
Yes.
had a rock polishing thing in his basement.
Right,
In fact,
he was a rock hound and archaeologist, or not
Wow.
archaeologist, but
Mineralogist.
now I can't think of it. Geologist.
Rock hand.
Geologist. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
okay. So yeah, it was really interesting, and I grew up loving rocks.
and we found out from one other show that I lived next to her grandfather and used to love to go in his basement because he would let us pick out polished rocks.
Small world.
That's
Yeah.
really funny because after we got done doing that show that day, Connie said, well, what about that guy that used to live on Iowa Avenue? And I go, oh, that was my grandfather, and she lived next door to him. So, small world.
Wow.
So, so tell us about where you went to school.
I went to school in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, at Bowman's Technical School, and it's the oldest jewelry school in the country. And I studied how to make jewelry, how to set gems, and learned somewhat about watches and clocks and things like that. So after that, we started a trade shop where we did work for other jewelers. So my twin brother ran the retail store, and I ran the wholesale store. So we did work for a lot of other jewelry stores, doing their design work, their ring sizes, their setting their stones, their repairs and things like that.
Did he go to school with you
Yes,
also?
he did.
And is this school still open?
No, that actually closed about 10 years ago.
Oh,
and,
really?
And there's actually another jeweler here in town that actually went to the same school,
No kidding.
Dorothy Dries.
Interesting. So,
You
if
talk about
somebody,
small world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if somebody wants to go into this profession today, where do they go?
There are some schools that are open, and they're very good schools. Probably one of the best is courses offered by the Gemological Institute of America, or GIA, which everyone pretty well knows what that is. But they offer a lot of courses in gemology, in jewelry making, in the study of pearls, how to manage stores. I mean, pretty much the A to Z of the jewelry industry.
And is this a 1-year course, 2-year course?
It's
3
it's
years?
basically however long you want it to be. You can take certain segments in residence or through correspondence, home study programs.
So do you get certain certificates? I
Yes.
mean, along the way in different areas
Right.
then? There isn't just one certificate of now you're a certified
well-
jewelry maker or whatever.
Yes, but that can be pieced together to make that. For example, for the gemology degree, graduate gemologist degree, you would have courses in diamond grading, colored stone grading, gem identification, and then when you take those three, then you become, you take the test and you become a graduate gemologist.
And how long would it take an individual to do that?
In residence, it's 6 months full-time.
Okay.
If you do it through correspondence, it's go on your own, so one could do it in 6 months to a year.
Okay. Well, it gives people an idea of, particularly young people, if they want. That's one thing we always like to talk about for young people that maybe are interested in this, for them to understand what kind of schooling they need to prepare themselves to go into this line of work. So that gives them an idea. My daughter doesn't know what she wants to do. Maybe I'll suggest this.
Right.
They have a website, GIA.com, I think it might be, or .org. I'm sure you can find a search engine, and it gives really good background on it.
Interesting.
Great information, and it's a great profession. I recommend it highly.
I know the public, we all love jewels and diamonds and pearls and everything, but I think when it comes down to it, I don't know very much about them at all. You know, about how to grade, what makes a good one, what makes a bad one, what's real, what's not real. There's a lot to know.
It seems to me, or at least my perception is that most people just go into the jewelry store and they go
Trust.
find something,
And they trust.
and then they go in and just find something, the setting that they like, not necessarily looking at the
stone.
quality of the stone and the color
Well-
and all those kinds of things. So really, that's kind of probably not the best way to buy it.
Well, there's an old saying that if you don't know jewelry, know your jeweler. And with that, you have to make sure that there's a certain amount of trust and confidence. And you want to make sure that the jeweler is well established, that they've been there for a while, that they have a good reputation. And educate yourself. You know, this is important, whether it's through reading, whether it's through the internet, or whether it's through plain old shopping around. That's one of the best things I could recommend to anyone who's interested in buying a gem, or for that matter, anything, is to really educate yourself. Not that you have to become a gemologist, as much as, you know, you'd be surprised at how much a lot of this boils down to your common sense. Oftentimes people will say that I didn't know the difference between the two stones, but you can really see, I think, with the proper tools and equipment, whether it's a microscope, if you're looking at diamonds or colored stones, if the gem has certification from a lab, then that always helps give a lot of credibility and confidence in that's the stone that I am buying, and we know that the value is there. So these are the things that you want to make sure that you feel confident and comfortable in making a gem purchase. And again, I emphasize shop around. That's probably the best thing to do, is to really just look and see that you feel comfortable with that color or that shape or that ring or whatever it is that you're interested in looking at.
Makes sense.
Maybe we should do the the A to Z's to buying a diamond, let's just take an example, because that's obviously one of the most popular stones, because people get them for getting engaged and getting married. So what are the things that we need to know?
I think the most important thing to remember, whether it's with a diamond or any gemstone, is that it really boils down to what is called the 4 C's. So that's color, clarity, carat weight, and cut. And so other people will add a 4th C or a 5th C or a 6th C and saying cost and confidence, but basically the 4 C's boil down to that if it's a diamond, you want it to be colorless or white. Diamond color, it starts at D color, which is perfect color, DEF.
And is that something, time out, is that something you can see with the naked eye? I mean, because when I go in the jewelry store, they all look white to me.
It's difficult to see that. It is difficult to see that, you're right. But when it goes down in color, like I, J, K, L, in those grades, then you will start seeing color in the diamond. Now, keep in mind too that when it gets so yellow, it becomes what's called a fancy yellow, and now the price starts going back up. So usually color in a stone, in a diamond, color such as yellow or a brown or a gray, that will oftentimes decrease the value of the stone. So you want to make sure that the diamond color is white. Now, the whiter the stone, the more valuable it is. Now, in terms of clarity, that clarity refers to the inclusions in the stone, or lack of inclusions in the stone. So, the perfect grade being flawless, and then there's VVS, which the initials stand for very, very slightly included, and then it goes to VS, and then it goes to SI, which means slightly imperfect, and then it goes to I color, or I'm sorry, I clarity. So this, to the naked eye, one cannot see the difference between a flawless diamond and an SI2 diamond. So when you're paying for anything better than an SI2 diamond in terms of clarity, you're buying that for what you know to be in the stone. Because to the other person that's looking at the stone, anyone looking at the stone cannot see those imperfections.
Which reminds me of some show that was on 2020 not too long ago about diamonds, and they were going in and purchasing a diamond, and then someone would take it back and they weren't getting the same value because they would say, look in the microscope, and there were inclusions.
Right.
That the first person said there wasn't, and there really were. So I guess you do have to have trust, and you do have to have
Absolutely.
a little bit of knowledge and look in there and shop around. And
this is probably right up there in terms of the top, it's got to be in the top 5, if not the top 3 professions that really rely on trust. And trust goes not just from the potential customer to the seller, but it also goes on my end to my suppliers, in that my word is much more valuable than any document that I could sign, and that if I give my word that I am buying that item, then I buy it. If I give my word to pay at a certain time, then I have to pay at a certain time. This is a business that is hugely founded in trust. One's word.
I know in Fairfield, for years, we always had Kirkus Jeweler and Gimbel's Jeweler, and they've been here forever, and everyone always, trusted them. So that it's nice when you live in a small town and you have someone established.
Absolutely.
And people aren't coming and going, and that was always nice. Mm-hmm.
And that's where their reputation lies, in that they've been here so long, that you find that that just helps give assurance to potential buyers that this is not a new company that they have to check to see if it's a good company or not. So
now, are there a lot more diamond stores than there ever used to be? Is this something that is a lot more popular than it used to be?
I think you're just more aware of them.
More aware of them. Okay, that could be it. I mean, in the malls and everywhere.
Well, it certainly seems that a lot of the malls have several chain stores, such as Zales or several of the other chains that make all the malls. And they're oftentimes regional, and there are some national ones, such as Zales, as I mentioned. But I think that there are probably the same number of stores that there have been. Some close and some open up. Some find a better region to a better location, so they move out of one mall and move into another. But
so and I travel a lot, and so I see a lot of jewelry stores and the big hotels and the big stones and the awesome prices. And where are all these coming from? Where do they come from?
Mother Earth. It's pretty amazing. Sometimes people think that that there have been shows on television saying how that there is an abundance of diamonds. And on one hand, yes, there is an abundance of diamonds, just as there is an abundance of a lot of minerals. But if you take a mine and you actually see the production that comes out of the mine, the amount of rough that comes out of the mine, you will have, say, in a week's mining production, you may have a mound like this of, say, emerald rough. And if you take that and you grade it, you may have a smaller pile that is commercial grade, and then you have an even smaller pile that is better than commercial grade, and then if you're lucky, you may have one or two crystals that are really premium grade. They're real gem quality. So you have to factor out how rare it is to get one fine crystal.
And how long does it take to make these?
Millions of years. This is not something.
They're still being made, kind of.
Right. Well, it's.
But.
I think that it's not as much being made as being discovered. You know, and it's pretty amazing to think that there are some locations in the world that have had a history of producing or finding certain gems there. And this history goes back not just hundreds of years, but literally thousands of years. And to think that one particular gem or gem family comes out of a location and it just keeps being found year after year. For example, Sri Lanka, you know, the Ceylon, the island off the southern tip of India, is world renowned for its sapphires, amongst a lot of other gems. But every year they keep finding more and more sapphires there. So it's pretty amazing, just like Bogota, Colombia, or
emeralds.
It's emerald, yes.
Right, you say Colombian, you think of emeralds. Like, we have this here in front of us.
Right.
This is
a little specimen of an emerald in the rough, as they call it. And I don't know how well it can be seen, but what you can see there is the shape of the emerald being very close to the actual formation of which it will be when it's polished.
It looks like someone just took it and stuck it there. It's just too perfect.
Well, that's a good specimen.
And emeralds are they ever cut round?
They are. In fact, I got one in today. But the thing that they want to do is whether it's, they want to try to retain as much weight as possible. That means that what the crystal formation is of that mineral or of that gem, they try to fashion a cut that is going to allow the maximum weight to be kept on the stone, because weight equals dollars. Remember, that's one of the 4 C's. So it's carat weight equals dollars to them.
Okay, let's talk about this one. Is this emerald?
That is emerald, but that is what is called a lab-grown emerald.
Lab-grown.
Yes. A fancy process discovered, I don't know, probably within the last 75 years, where they take the actual minerals that make a natural emerald, a real emerald, and they put it in a proper environment and grow emeralds. And they do it as well with ruby and with sapphire and pretty much any gem. But keep in mind that since the beginning of time, or since the beginning of the gem business, as it were, man has always tried to find a way to duplicate what nature does. So this is not, it's a more sophisticated process of an old practice. people always trying to imitate, something that looks more valuable. And it's chemically the same makeup.
So how long would it take to create something of that size?
Boy, I couldn't tell you, but I mean, I'm going to say it's weeks as opposed to a million years or whatever, thousands of years to make a real emerald.
Sure. And then once emeralds are, I guess they're somehow cut or chiseled out of this rock,
Right.
and they're cut, then do they have to be polished some more on the outside?
Yes. So there
So
are...
we get a finished piece like this,
Right.
and this did open, and I don't think Richard can probably see this because it's too small, but this is an incredible emerald right here. The color is completely, it's just beautiful.
It's very, very, very green, dark green. It's gorgeous.
Now that is a rare stone in that when you get something that color, that clean, and that size, then we're talking about a very rare gem. And hence the price will reflect that. But the cutting, as you mentioned prior to that, when a piece of rough is taken out of its, oftentimes what is called a host rock or its matrix, then the cutter figures out the best shape that will yield the maximum value in the stone. So then they'll cut it, and it's cut on a what looks like a record player. It's a circular disc, and it's there's a lubricant, usually water, or in the case of diamonds, it's olive oil, and
Olive oil?
sounds like a good recipe, right?
Yeah.
And then
they drink wine on the side.
That's right. And then
While Mama's cooking the pasta.
Then they basically grind it on that circular motion there. And so they fashion it to get the most brilliance out of it too. It's not just whack it to make it look nice. They actually have a formula that they're going to try to make the stone have the maximum brilliance, the maximum life.
So do you think if you whack this open, there'd be another one in there?
Well, that's a question a lot of people have asked. But it usually forms in what's called a pocket, and that is, that there'll be like a geode, that something forms and you open it up. This is probably the rock face, the rock wall, and the crystals here formed on the outside of the wall.
Okay.
So
And then it would be covered up with dirt or some other things.
And so have you ever found these?
I was going to say, did you dig this one yourself?
No, I bought that in Bogota, Colombia, but I bought it from a man who
Found it.
No, I think he bought it from a man who found it. But I have been in Brazil in the mines, where I did see the schist come out of the ground, and
The schist.
Yes, schist.
Okay.
It's
New
basically
word.
the gravel, the dirt that comes out of the ground, and I picked through and found emerald crystals in there. So it's
Did you get to take them home?
Yeah, some of the less expensive ones, and ones that I paid for.
Well, and the ones that, a while ago you were talking about different grades of like
Right.
a commercial grade.
Right.
Now, what does commercial grade mean? Is that something that's not going to be in a gemstone?
No, that will be in a gemstone, but it'll be in a low quality gem.
Okay.
So something that you may find at a big discount, so that they'll say it's a 1 carat genuine emerald for $10 or something like that.
Color's not good, clarity's not good.
Sometimes it's
those
good
kinds of
color, but
things.
it's mostly clarity that's the affecting value.
Okay.
Well, I guess I better put this down.
So where other adventures have you been to find gems? And can you just show up at the mine? I mean,
Yeah.
Do you have to have an appointment?
well, yeah. I mean, can we just go on an adventure and say we're here to dig now? Let us in?
It's always best to make an appointment with these people. There are oftentimes some of the areas are rather guarded, as you can imagine. Some of them are not very safe, as you can imagine. But a lot of them, and it depends upon which part of the world you're in, Like for Sri Lanka, for example, there are just guys out in the field with a hole in the ground.
So it's
And it might
hard
go
work.
down 10 feet. Sure, it's hard work, but the thing is that it can be a great reward at the same time. You know, it's the equivalent of gold fever. I mean, they're looking for their rainbow, their pot
So
of gold
I'm
at the end of the rainbow.
Sure, there must be stories of
Yeah.
poor people that struck it rich. And
Yes, yes. In fact, I was in Bogota one time, and there was one man who I did a lot of business with, and he came up to me one day, so beaming that his friend who I'd met became a millionaire overnight because he found a pocket of over 6 kilos of emerald rough, gem quality emerald rough. And my first comment was, it wasn't overnight.
Oh, it took them a long time, a lot of hard work to get there.
But it's certainly, you know, it's certainly a great find nonetheless, you know, and it'd make anyone happy, you know, to find a pocket of gem emerald rough like that.
So where do you get your materials from or your rocks from? I mean,
I
you're not
travel all over.
ordering from the mine, right? I mean,
No.
what's the process to get to you,
That's
I guess?
a great question.
Maybe that's where should we start? How does it, obviously we've covered the guy who's digging in the hole or in the cave or wherever.
Well, usually how the process works is that the rough, which is mine, you know, the material comes out of the earth. The person cleans it and finds the rough minerals. And what he does is he oftentimes sells it to a guy that travels around. Or if they live in a remote area, they'll take it to a bigger city and sell it
Are
to
you the guy
cover
that
store.
travels around?
No,
No, you're further down
I
the
don't
line.
buy. I don't buy.
Okay.
I don't buy rough.
Further up the food
Okay,
chain.
right.
Buying rough is a very tricky process because it can look great and you can cut it and lose your shirt, or it can look really bad and you pass on it and somebody else buys it and cuts it and makes a fortune. It really takes a great eye and a lot of experience in determining what is inside that rock, what is inside that piece of material that is going to make enough money that the person will yield a profit. So yeah, there are stories galore about how somebody passes on something and somebody makes a fortune on it. And,
So after this person,
so then
makes
it goes from that person buys the rough. They oftentimes will sell, or they'll have it cut. So that might be a cutting factory where they send a guy to the mines, or and he goes around to all the little miners and buys the rough. Hit the cutting factory there, we'll cut the stones, and then that's where I get from them.
okay.
So that's a nice place to be at, you know, in that if you can get it there, then it helps save money. But you know, there are a lot of people going after that same thing, so it requires a certain amount of skill and a certain amount of luck to be there at the right place at the right time. So, and then what happens, that usually ends up with a dealer in the States here that either goes on the road and sells to jewelry stores or goes to shows. You know, they have major jewelry shows, and they sell to other jewelers that way.
So then you are just the gemstone. You're not into the actual jewelry.
Right.
But
Even
he
though
can make it. He told me this
I can
yesterday.
make it. But I kind of hung up the torch about 10 years ago. But I dabble with it. It's a great hobby, and it's also one I highly recommend if anyone's interested in creative arts like that. It's a great thing.
So if you're going to make, say for example, this ring, like, okay, you've got the stone,
Right.
and then the gold or whatever, obviously it's not pure gold,
Right.
but how does it come? Like in a
It comes in
lump or what?
It comes in what's called shot. So S-H-O-T, like buckshot.
Buckshot.
And it's just little
Okay.
little granulations, or you know, and that's pure gold. It's what's called fine gold. It's 0.999% pure. And then what you do is you what's called alloy it down to the carat that you want. So if it's 14 carat, then 14 karat is approximately a little bit more than half of 24 karat. Do you understand? So 24 karat, half of that's 12 karat. So
Got it.
it's a little bit more. It's 585% pure gold. So the extra, difference between 14 and 24, the extra 10% there, that's an alloy. That's a mixture of silver or copper or zinc or nickel, whatever the mixtures that they add will yield different colors of gold, and the amount that you put in will yield the karat gold that you want and the color gold that you want. So you can get an 18 karat gold, you can get a 10 karat gold, and you can get variations in the colors. You can take a yellow gold, which we're all used to, or a white gold, which we know about, but there's pink or rose gold, there's a green gold, there's black gold, there's different shades of gold, yeah.
So that's a whole nother...
It's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
And obviously you heat that up and then start forming it however you want to. Is there
Well,
little molds
no.
or what?
See, what you would do in the case of your
Showing
ring
our
here,
ignorance here.
in the case of your ring there, what a jeweler would do is first create a design that you'd be happy with. So he would take this stone and maybe sketch out several different designs for you to choose from, or maybe you have an idea that you like and you come in with the design.
I was just going to say, I do know more about this part of it,
Oh,
because
good.
when I was in high school, Bob Glocky let me do a ring, and it was lost wax.
That's right.
I sculpted it out of wax. It's actually my husband's ring, and it's kind of like his wedding ring. And sculpted it out of wax and made it fit, and then made a mold, and then poured it in there, and poof, I had a ring.
Well, the mold is you put the wax in a little canister, and you put what looks like plaster of Paris in there, and you let that harden, and then you put it in what's called a burnout oven, and the heat in there is going to melt the wax. And there's your lost wax idea.
This was just in the paper.
With
The guy.
Travis
Yes,
Hunt,
yes.
with the sculpture making the shell, which,
Right.
having done that procedure, I did understand it a little bit more.
Yeah, and then you have to pour the gold into that mold. So the best way that they do that is either through a centrifugal force, which means that they put the canister in front. They have a little crucible in front of the canister, and they melt the gold, and then it spins the gold into the mold there. Or you have what's called a vacuum casting, in which case you put
Mine was a
the
vacuum.
canister on top of a vacuum that is sucking the air down, and you're pouring the molten metal into the mold that way, and it gets drawn in so that there are no holes in the gold. It'll just be one solid casting.
And that's what mine was, and we used a silver spoon that we melted. And he
And there you
wears
go.
it to this day.
And you use a silver spoon, no kidding. Interesting.
And then once that's done, you take that and you clean the ring up. That means you polish it, and there are various stages of doing that. You use different, like sandpaper or emery paper, and then you use different polishing compounds to get the maximum brightness out of the stone, out of the gold or the metal that you're using, and then you set the stone. And setting it requires a good skill so that you're not breaking the stone or chipping the stone. And once that's done, you make sure it's the right size, and you have a finished product.
Sounds very tedious.
It's actually not that bad. I mean, certainly that's a simple ring, and there are certainly very complex rings which may take, a week, 2 weeks to make a single ring. Just as there are simple gems to cut where it might take, a day to cut it or hours to cut a stone. And there's one diamond cutter that I do business with that will take 6 months to cut a diamond.
Well, I recently saw a show this fall about a big diamond that was found, and I don't remember how many carats it was, but this thing was like this big, And it took this guy, he studied this, I think it was like either 2.5 or 3 years before they cut it. Every day he looked at that stone and measured and measured and measured and have other people look at it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it would take that long to study this rock to cut it.
Well, the thing is that a mistake one way or another will sometimes mean the person makes money or doesn't make money. I have, as I said, that my friend that does these larger stones, and he'll take maybe 6 months to cut a stone. It's a 15, 20, 25 carat diamond. But he studies that so much that he wants to make sure that he's getting not only the maximum weight out of it, but he wants to make sure that it's going to be the maximum clarity and it's going to be the best color that he's going to be able to extract from that. So there may be a variation in the diamond crystal, that there may be a little yellow in one area, that he has to really play in making with the crystal to make sure that the yellow doesn't come into the stone.
I'm sure it would be like mapping out.
Oh, exactly.
Day after day, all these little, the color, inclusions, whatever, and to keep a record of what you're seeing. And
well, and when you're cutting, can the stone, can a diamond break and
Yes,
then
it
all of a
can.
sudden go, oh?
Yes,
I'm
it can.
sure if there were inclusions, you know, it could like,
It's not just
or
even inclusions. It's it can be what is, it's called a knot in the stone, in that the diamond can look crystal clear, but in the formation of it, it is twisted, and there's what's called a knot in the diamond, which actually makes a diamond, which is extremely hard to begin with. It's the hardest mineral known to man. That knot is actually even harder to cut.
Wow.
And that can actually, when too much pressure is applied in that area or too much heat is applied in that area, the diamond can explode. And there are stories of that happening, nightmare stories. but,
Wow. I was going to compare it to John Shermer carving our Santa.
Exactly.
And when he runs into a knot
in the wood.
You have to design around it and go with it and follow the way it wants you to go. You don't always have a say.
Well,
So.
we're thankful that the Santa Claus and Mrs. Claus
Right.
look the way they do.
Right, they look wonderful. So, what do I have here?
That is a tourmaline crystal.
And you said something about watermelon.
Well, this is a watermelon tourmaline in that most people, when they think of tourmaline, they think of a green tourmaline. And this is a watermelon tourmaline in that it has green on one end of it, and it goes into a pink tourmaline, which like a watermelon would have a green on the outside and a red on the inside. So hence its name. But you can see from the way the crystal grows in a long fashion like that, you will find that most tourmalines that you do see in a store, the majority of them are cut in a rectangular, or what is called an emerald cut.
Okay.
And the color differentiation is because of the mineral
Correct.
that went there.
Right, right.
Very pretty.
Now, you know, this brings up an interesting thing, because oftentimes we think of one mineral, but you'd be surprised at how many gems fall under that one mineral. For example, beryl, the name Beryl, if beryl is green, it's emerald, which we're looking at here. But if it's blue beryl is aquamarine. And if it's pink beryl, that's morganite. And if it's white beryl, that's goshenite. If it's yellow beryl, that's heliodor. So
I've never heard of these things.
heliodor?
I've heard of that one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a yellow.
yeah, I like
it's a
that
yellow
one.
stone. But the ones that you will know of is corundum. Now, corundum, when it is blue,
Sounds like another word to me. Corundum. Okay, go on.
when corundum is blue, it's sapphire. But sapphire comes in every color under the sun, except when it becomes a red sapphire, it's called ruby. So ruby and sapphire are the same family.
Now, I'm going to relate this to wine
I like this.
because just the names, if it's this thing, it's that thing, and if it's that, then it's really, you call it this.
Yeah.
You can tell how much I really know about that, too.
And that'll be another show.
Right. That's interesting.
It is, because a lot of people don't realize that it's the same mineral. It's just that there's another trace mineral that gets involved, and it creates a different color in the gem.
So the hardness of all those kinds of sapphires, are they similar in
They're
hardness?
all the same. They're all exactly the same hardness.
And is that close to, I mean, what's the diamond is the hardest, and then what's the next, like 3 or 4?
Well, diamond is the hardest, and if you take what's called the Mohs scale of hardness, 1 is talc, something powdery soft, and diamond is number 10. And all of the gems, all of the minerals that they have assigned for the different hardnesses, all fall into place. 9 being corundum, which is ruby and sapphire, and 10 being diamond. But the reality is that diamond is so far harder than corundum that if you actually mapped it out to the degree of the rest of the chart, it would be 42 in hardness. So it would be 1 through 9, and then nothing between 9 and 40 till 42. But we assign diamond as 10 because it's the next hardest. Oh. So there is sapphire.
So that makes those seem really soft to me.
Well, corundum is really hard. It's very durable. If you have a sapphire ring and you wear it every day, you'd find that 10, 20 years from now it shows very little signs of wear. A diamond should show no sign of wear. But softer stones, as you go down, an emerald being between an 8 and an 8.5, then you're going to see that it may abrade or scratch more easily. A peridot being like a 7, you see that the softer stones like quartz. Quartz is the most abundant mineral on the planet. Purple quartz is amethyst, yeah. Yellow quartz is
citrine.
Citrine, yeah. So this is the most abundant gemstone.
What's a yellow sapphire? A sapphire. Duh.
She's got it.
I'm trying to make it something more difficult. Oh, okay. Brother, that's embarrassing. Okay.
It's the same like pink sapphire, blue sapphire, purple sapphire.
It's somehow
sapphire.
Because I don't know. You try to make them something different than what they are.
They do. Like as I said, pink beryl is actually a name. Pink beryl is a gem. But J.P. Morgan, in the turn of the century, decided to name the gem after him. So it became morganite. So that they think that will help popularize it. They give a little bit more of a mystique or mystery, romancing the stone.
Yeah. So here's another example of tourmaline, and you can't. When you hold this up to the light, you can really see the green in here. This is a sample that I brought from home. This is part of my husband's rock collection. So on the hardness scale, where do these fit in?
Oh, I think tourmaline is somewhere around an 8 in hardness.
Okay.
So 7.5, 8 in hardness.
Okay.
And what's that other one you have over there?
This one is actually, these are garnets.
Mm-hmm.
We got this in Alaska when we went on our cruise last year. And when you get off the boat, there's these little kids before and after school that sit out there at the end of the dock. And we bought this, we bargained for her. We got this for $5. And there's a mine that, this is up in Wrangell, Alaska actually, which is a southern, portion of Alaska. And just a beautiful little town. If you want to get away from the world, go there. It was wonderful. And I think the mine used to be mined, I want to say I can't remember. But at any rate, they have donated the mine, and they let the kids go there and just dig as they please, and then they sell these to the tourists that stop. Now, we were told, of course, that this is not gem quality, that these are really soft, but it was kind of a fun little trinket.
Something to bring home.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Bob said that this material here, which is probably
schist.
Okay. But I think he said this wouldn't be the normal thing that you would find a garnet in, kind of rock. Does that make sense?
It's interesting because you can find different gems in different host material, different matrix.
Okay.
For example, this is oftentimes the host rock that you will find emeralds in Colombia. But in Brazil, you find emeralds in a much softer rock. In Australia, it's much harder than this to extract. So it can be found in different host material. This garnet crystal is really neat because they form in a cubic fashion, and it actually looks like a little ball, and you get to see all the way the facets that are on it like that. It's a great specimen to have.
Yeah, pretty neat.
And the thing is that the great thing about something like this is that this shows you that even a gem that is not worth cutting still has value in the fact that it's a specimen. This is more valuable, even though it's a nice emerald crystal in here, this is more valuable as a specimen than to take that gem out and to try to cut it. This, by the way, is a sapphire crystal.
That is.
Yeah.
A white sapphire. Yeah.
Yellowish
sort of.
sapphire.
Does it look like quartz a little?
It does, but that's because it's a clearer color. But it's more. They can come red, they can come any color, and oftentimes what they do too is they will heat treat that to try to produce a richer color out of it, or a more exotic color.
So heat treating. Now tell us about that.
And now we're getting into a great field here.
Is that the normal thing before
No.
the gem gets to a jewelry store?
It became really popular in the mid-'80s. But keep in mind that heat treating corundum, heat treating sapphires and rubies, has been around for thousands of years. There are texts in India that talk about heat treating rubies and sapphires that are 1,000 years old, 1,500 years old, 2,000 years old. But it became real popular in the late 70s and 80s because they found that they could take a lot of the trailings, the discardable rough from Sri Lanka, out of the mines in Sri Lanka. This is stuff that you would put in your aquarium. This is stuff that you would pave your driveway with. And people in Thailand were buying this for pennies a pound. And they were taking it back to Thailand and they were heat treating it and producing beautiful blues out of it. They took a milky white stone that you couldn't even see through, and the heat treating process will make the color blue or another color, pink, yellow, anything come out of the stone, and the milkiness would be driven off by the heating process. So you would get a great crystal.
And when you say heat, like stick it in an oven type thing,
Well,
or a torch, or what?
It's a little hotter than that. The heat process that they use for heating corundum is between 1,800 and 2,000 degrees. So it's almost to the melting point of corundum.
I was going to say like melting glass or...
Yeah. And, but it's not reconstituting it as much as there may be some trace mineral in there that is allowed to be
So are
released.
the little particles bonding together and becoming a bigger one?
No, what's
No?
happening is that say that there may be some barely visible inclusion in here, which is called, say, if it's rutile in
Okay.
here, and they heat it, rutile, or it's an iron mineral, and what happens with that is that it will produce a yellow color.
Okay.
If it's titanium or something like, you will get different minerals will produce different colors in the gem.
And that didn't start until the 70s and 80s?
Well, it became really popular because what they did is that a lot of people in Thailand were able to perfect and almost make a science out of taking what is normally thrown away material and to producing some great quality gemstones. And the good thing about that too, though, is that it helped bring a lot of sapphire onto the market at a very good price. And this is one more process of enhancing the gem's beauty, just like cutting a stone is much more beautiful than a little crystal would be. Although there's something nice about a well-formed crystal. I mean, sometimes you see some old jewelry that will have, a pendant made out of a little diamond crystal or something like that.
Would a diamond in the rough, I mean, it doesn't look like a diamond, obviously. I mean,
looks like...
Does it look similar to that? I mean,
yes. A well-formed diamond crystal is basically like two pyramids upside down, stuck together at the base. And it's a beautiful specimen. It looks great. And there are some jewelers that actually take low-quality diamond rough, but well-formed crystals, and that aren't worth cutting, but they make jewelry out of it. And yes, it's a diamond crystal in the rough. So there's something really nice about that.
And providing that the cut and clarity, the 4 C's are all there, when you pay X amount today for that, 50 years from now, is it going to be more valuable? It's going to hold its value? It's going to be the same? Or is it really going to depend on the market as a whole? I mean, obviously that has something to do with it, a supply and demand. But in general, I mean...
Yes, the generalization has certainly shown that over, say, the last 100 years, the diamond market actually has always been in the plus column. With the exception of in the early 80s, with inflation, there were a lot of things that just skyrocketed, such as gold and silver and diamonds. Gold was at $800 an ounce. Silver was at $50 an ounce. A 1-carat perfect diamond, a D flawless diamond, was trading at $65,000. Now, when that market crashed, gold went from $800 down to $300-400, and now it's settled in the high 200s. Silver went from $50 an ounce down to $5 an ounce. Now it's somewhere around, $4 and change. 1-carat perfect diamonds went from $65,000 down to, it went down, I think, to a low of about $11,000 or $14,000, and they're up around $17,000. But the rest of the market has always been in the plus column.
Interesting. And we haven't touched on pearls, and I understand that's something that you...
It's one of my babies. I
was just going to ask what your favorite thing is.
They all have some, touch something in me that...
you don't have any on.
Oh, I'm the gem dealer that wears nothing, I guess I'm around them all day long, but I do have a pearl ring that I don't wear.
Now tell me about this one.
Now
I just fell in love with it in Australia. It's not an expensive anything, but I can't remember what it's called.
It's called a Mabé pearl.
A Mabé pearl?
And what is that?
M-A-B-E, Mabé. And what it is it's a blister pearl. It's a cultured pearl, but what they do is that instead of forming the pearl inside a pearl sac, this actually forms on the shell inside. And they actually...
It's flat on one side, isn't it?
They carve the shell, and it's like a blister. It's a thin coating that they put like an epoxy inside, and then the back side of it has a hard mother of pearl backing.
Now, I want to say that Australia had a lot of an area that and that's why I picked it out in Port Douglas, because it meant something to me.
Well, Australia is world-renowned as one of the major sources for pearls, in particular South Sea pearls, what's called South Sea pearls, and that's a larger pearl that has a lot of pearl on it. I'll explain that in a second here. I'm going to get
don't forget that you're
specimen
wired.
Here. I won't. I'm going to grab a couple specimens here. Okay. Now, the nice thing about pearls is that no matter where they come from in the world, well, except China right now, they almost all have their origin right in our backyard, the Mississippi River. Oh. So from the Mississippi River and a lot of other domestic lakes and rivers, freshwater lakes and rivers, people shell for the certain types of shell that will have a lot of what's called mother of pearl inside here. They take this mother of pearl and they make beads out of it. The bead is then implanted into one of these big oysters.
Now, you find this in the Mississippi River?
Yeah.
This thing right here?
This is a
like
mussel.
In Muscatine, they had the button factory.
That's
They
right.
made pearl buttons.
That's right.
But I didn't understand it completely. So they're like taking this and making buttons.
Right.
Actually, sometimes on the buttons you can see the rough side.
Yeah.
But
They take
There-
this, the thick part here, and they take that and make a bead out of it. They put that bead inside the shell.
Inside of that.
Now they may take this and they open this up, the shell up, and they may put 10 beads in here. They close it up, let it go back into the river or the ocean for, it might be months or years, and it gets coated with pearl, what's called nacre. And that is actual pearl. But that's coating what's called a mother of pearl bead. This coating that's in there is oftentimes not very thick. So what you get as a cultured pearl from Japan has a thickness that's about as thick as your fingernail, 0.4 of a millimeter. So it's not that thick. Your South Sea pearl, where your ring came from, in Australia, those pearls are left in the oyster for quite a long time, and that will have several millimeters of nacre on there, of pearl on there. So those pearls are more valuable and they last longer. Pearls coming out of China now, and there's been a great find with this over the last 10 years. China has gotten much more skilled at culturing a more round pearl, but they've done it by using what is called the mantle tissue instead of a mother of pearl. They take a little bit of the meat or the fleshy part of one mussel and use that as the nucleus or the starting point, the proverbial grain of sand inside an oyster or a mussel, and they find that it forms rather quickly. So you have a pearl that is pretty much pearl through and through. If you were to cut that pearl open, you'll find that there's no bead inside, that it's pearl, even though it's a cultured pearl. And the amazing thing is that the price is really affordable. So what you might pay for a Japanese strand of pearls, for a fraction of that, you can get a Chinese strand of pearls.
I was just going to say, another show on 2020 was about pearls, and it's interesting.
Now, there's one other type of pearl which is neat, and that is called the natural pearl, which I just touched on. And when natural pearls are going to be found naturally in ocean pearls and in freshwater pearls. But how they find them in freshwater pearls, these guys that actually dive for this shell, they tell me that they feel for what is called a cripple, and it's a little wrinkle in the shell here. And if you look, this doesn't match to this shell, otherwise it would raise up here. And oftentimes that has a pearl inside it. Well, that one does. Oh. But this actually formed to the shell as opposed to in the pearl sac. So.
And that's where
this
a
would be a
grain of
natural
sand
pearl.
gets inside. Correct. And it keeps.
And this formed, this would form a natural pearl. Now, natural pearls are a whole other baby in itself, in that they are very rare and very expensive.
So I remember in Hawaii they had this little place where you could go pick out a shell and you're guaranteed a pearl, or 2 or 3, and so you pay $5 or something and you grab one, and of course I got the one with the 1, but I remember bringing it home.
And getting it mounted up. Yeah.
I think I still have it somewhere.
I think I have one of those too. I got in Florida, actually. And obviously, it's a cultured pearl, and probably wasn't in the water very long, right?
No, what it probably was is that they just took low-grade pearls and stuck them in a clam and sold them like that.
Oh no!
Yeah.
It's worse than we thought.
Ducks.
Well, then that way they can guarantee that you have something in there. Okay. And I would venture to say that most of them are going to have one pearl in it.
Well, it looked like it was, I mean, you opened the shell and it looked like it was in there. I mean, not like they planted it.
Yeah. But that's how they do. They basically do put it in, even for the culturing.
Okay.
That they're basically putting it in underneath the what's called a pearl sac, just right inside the a certain area of the shell that's going to allow the pearl to grow without being expelled.
Okay. Now we know.
So obviously, like you said, the natural pearls are going to be much more expensive. But if somebody's just going to the jewelry store to buy, pearls, a strand of pearls, is there anything that they need to look for? Anything they really need to know? Or again, is it down to trust of knowing your jewelry?
Well, you can always ask, where are the pearls from, and utilize this principle that I said in the beginning, common sense. You look at the pearls. If it's a necklace, you want to see the uniformity, and not just the shape, in that they're all round or closely matched in roundness. You want to see that they're all matched in color, and you want to see that they're matched in surface perfections or imperfections. You want to make sure that if that there's very few blemishes on the pearls, and at least they're matched in uniformity. You don't want something that's a lighter pearl and a darker pearl, and one that's bigger and one that's flatter, one that has a big blemish on it and one that doesn't. So the uniformity is what's important there.
I'm trying to remember on that 2020 show, it talked about color, and it showed 3 different ones, and it said, you guess which one is the most valuable, and then later they came back. I'm thinking it was the pinkish.
Yeah, it's not that it's the most valuable. Keep in mind too that part of the process of getting these pearls or getting the pearls all strung and everything else is that they take the pearls, they're drilled, they're cleaned first. That means that they're cleaned of any oyster material or anything like that. Then they're drilled. After they're drilled, they're bleached. So the bleaching does a couple things. One is it not only cleans the pearl, but it also helps make a uniformity in the color. Then oftentimes they will dye it. So the pink may be part of the dye that is used. Now that's not something.
It's a natural color, no?
Yeah, no, it's not. No. But there are some natural colors. There are peachy ones that come out of China that are natural colors. There are lavender ones. There are natural yellow ones and so on. But for pretty much what you see in the general market, they are usually bleached and dyed.
I didn't realize that.
But that color is more the preferred color in the general market, in that it's white, but it's a rosé. They call it a rosé color. Yeah, there we go, a wine color.
It also mentioned that sometimes the older antique pearls are very valuable.
Yes. Well, and the reason for that is they're most likely a natural pearl.
Okay.
And if they're natural and there's a nice shape to it and it's a large size and it's relatively clean, exceedingly rare. And that, coupled with the fact that it's on an estate piece of jewelry or an antique piece of jewelry, makes it a very sought-after piece.
What about biting? Have I heard or seen where people bite? Is it pearls?
Yeah.
They do, and I should have brought out a fake strand of pearls and a real strand of pearls and have you test this. But it's a real simple process. If you're unsure whether a pearl is, I'm going to say real or fake, then understand that the real is it could be natural or it could be cultured.
But it's real.
But we'll call that the real category. The fake category means any faux pearls, any fake pearls. You know that it's basically a plastic pearl. They can look really close.
They can.
But how you're able to tell is you oftentimes will see somebody put it up to their teeth and bite it. Now, in taking that and biting that pearl, what you're basically detecting is it feel smooth like glass or plastic, or does it feel a little gritty and grainy, which would be a real pearl or a cultured pearl?
So they're going to move their teeth back and forth on a little
You're
bit, you're saying?
You're chomping on that pearl a little bit.
And are you
yes.
going to leave a dent in it?
No. Hopefully not.
If you do, then you have to buy them. Right.
If there's a dent in it, then it was a real pearl, and there's no value in it.
Right. Okay, I got it. Well, I was just looking at my list here to see if we covered all the things that we want to talk about, and I think there are two more things. We talked about diamond trade a little bit, and I think you mentioned there were 4 areas of the major diamond trade. Explain that a little bit.
Well, diamonds are found in a lot of places around the world, and oftentimes we think of diamonds, we think of South Africa. The biggest find in recent years has been in Australia. There's a huge find right now in the last couple of years in Canada, and this is looking to be a very promising find here. But diamonds, like a lot of gems, are found in oftentimes pretty remote areas, and they're cut or traded in the trading centers. And whereas the emeralds are found in different parts of Colombia, they're cut and traded in Bogota. Gems are found all over in Brazil, but they're pretty much cut and traded in Rio or Sao Paulo or Minas Gerais. Diamonds, no matter where they're found, they're pretty much cut and traded in 4 main spots. The 4 main cutting areas would be India, Bombay, India, Antwerp, Belgium, in Israel, and in New York. Now, sure, there are cutting centers in Chicago, there are cutting centers all over, West Coast, East Coast, everywhere. But the major manufacturers of diamonds, the major cutters of diamonds, are in these 4 areas. And interestingly enough, there's the rough that goes to those areas will yield particular sizes and shapes. For example, India, since it's labor intensive to cut small diamonds, and labor is cheaper in India, then they cut the smaller diamonds. So they get all the little teeny diamonds that you see in accents of rings. A majority of that is cut in India. Yes, they're cut in Israel. Yes, there's some cut in Russia. They're cut in New York even, but the majority comes out of India. Fancy cuts are cut in Israel. Larger shapes are cut in Antwerp, and big diamonds are cut in New York. So these are the general trends for those different cutting facilities.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned earlier something about shows, gem shows.
Right.
So where and when are those?
Well, actually, there's one of the large ones are coming up the beginning of February. Happens every year in Tucson, Arizona. That's the big colored gemstone show. And so that's
So not diamonds necessarily.
No.
Colored gems.
Colored gemstones. Diamonds are, they don't do many shows just with diamonds. So diamond dealers are actually a very small part of the Tucson Gem Show, but they're a larger player in the New York shows, the Jewelers of America show. So those shows will have some diamond dealers. But keep in mind that a lot of the diamonds that are purchased by jewelers are pretty much already set up into rings. So most of the diamond dealers or diamond cutters are going to be selling right to the manufacturers. And it's the manufacturers that will be showing at these shows. So now there's that one. There's some other big ones in the United States, or they're all over the world probably. They're in Italy, they're in Germany,
but for the United States, this one is the biggest one.
Well, for the loose color gemstones, this is one of the biggest ones. There's a great show in Denver in September, which is a great gem and mineral show, great gem, mineral, and fossil show for people that want to go down there. For people that want to go rock hunting, not too far from here in Arkansas is some great rock hunting that can get done down there, digging for crystals.
Yeah.
And Connie's husband actually,
Yeah, he was world champion one
he
year.
was world champion.
Oh.
And you know what
World
was interesting is that they put this beautiful quartz crystal in a what do I want to
Display
say?
case?
Well,
Lucite thing? Or?
yeah, but it was like poured over it, so it was
Oh.
like a trophy, the plastic part.
Oh, okay.
And the crystal said, "I don't like this," and it broke it right in half.
Wow.
Yeah, but it didn't last. I mean, I don't know how long he had it, but you know, when I met him, this beautiful trophy, I mean, this thing was this big, you know, the lucite or whatever plastic that had encased this crystal had been split right in half. It was
And he had a
interesting.
lot of fun finding it, right?
Yeah, he had a blast.
Yeah. I think they have, once a year in the fall, they have a contest, I think,
Yeah.
that you register for $25 or $50 and you go digging in the ground.
Every year we talk about going and something comes up and we don't have time.
Well,
and
let's
that
do it.
kind
Well,
of
it's
thing.
hard to beat that one.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. So, oh, you have to tell us your ruby story.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you have something else?
Well, I'll finish with something else here. But the ruby story, I think that you're referring to is that ruby that I got. Okay, this was I had a call from a gem dealer in California to find one of the best 3-carat rubies that I could find. So a few years back, I went to the Tucson Gem Show and found this great ruby, but I didn't buy it at first, and I went around and shopped all these other great gem dealers that I know, and they were all saying that the best ruby that they knew was this particular ruby. So I scurried back and bought that ruby, but I bought it, and I bought it from the gentleman saying that it has to have a lab certification with it. Because it was such a valuable gem, naturally I wanted to make sure that, and the client wanted to make sure that it had a great certificate with it. So I bought it, and I ran into the president of one of the labs there, and I said, "Are you aware of this ruby?" And he said, "Yes, I am." And I said, "And it is what this gem dealer is saying it is. You know, it's that great." And he said, "Yes." I said, "Okay, great." Well, I went back, I bought the ruby for a lot of money, and I had to send it to him to get all the final verification lab report finished. And since I had an anxious customer on the other end, I said, "You know, please make sure you're quick with this." Well, a week went by, and I was really getting anxious here, and I called him and I said, "So what's the deal with this stone?" And he said, "Well, it's a beautiful ruby, but I can't tell whether it's real or not." So he couldn't tell whether it was a real gemstone or whether it was lab grown. Now, this is saying the difference between whether this is a $100,000 stone or a $1,000 stone. So, needless to say, I was biting
That'd
my
be
nails a
me. I
little bit.
couldn't tell.
Well, the labs are supposed to tell. And so we sent it over to the Gemological Institute of America. And after a week there, they called me and told me that they couldn't tell whether this was real or not. So I really started to panic, and I said, "Now, what are we going to do?" And he said, "Well, we have to send it out to our lab in California, and there's a small break in the stone, and we have to shoot an X-ray fluorescence spectrometer in there, and that will be able to determine whether it's real or not." So after a long and grueling weekend, it was determined to be real, which made me happy, which made my client happy, and his client happy. But you know, that's all following the fact that before I even got it in my hands, the gem dealer offered to buy it back for what started out to be $1,000 profit, then a $2,000 profit, and $3,000 profit. And he said, "Shawn, I'll just rip your check up and just hand you a check." And he got up to $5,000. And I said, "Why are you offering me so much money? I already paid you and it's a done deal." And he said, "Well, the thing is that somebody looked at it right before you bought it, and they had to make a phone call, and they got approval to buy it." And I said, "So what's the big deal about that?" And he said, "Well, this was the jeweler for the royal family in England, So they wanted for one of the royals to have as a lapel pin. So naturally he wanted to put a feather in his cap, but I'd already committed it to somebody else. So anyway, the good news is that the story ended up that it was a real ruby and everybody was happy. So
I wouldn't think, I mean, that it would be so difficult.
well, the process is getting more and more difficult because the conditions by which they're able to grow these, technology has advanced so much that they're able to mimic the growth process so closely in ruby, sapphire, and emerald that it's very, very difficult.
In those three,
In particular, those three
in
areas.
particular.
Right. And they're the most valuable gems next to a diamond.
So as they perfect this, how are we ever going to know? I mean,
Well, naturally,
will they get more like black market type?
no, that's why the important thing is that you know your jeweler. And the jeweler's has that responsibility on him to make sure that he has trusted suppliers. And if there's ever a question, you know, when I mentioned in the beginning of the show, one of the important things is to shop around. Any stone that has a value to it, you know, a substantial value to it, see what you can do to get certification from a laboratory on that, such as the American Gem Trade Laboratory, the American Gem Laboratories, the European Gem Laboratories, or the Gemological Institute of America. These are some of the major laboratories that do certification on diamonds and colored gemstones.
So when you buy something, is there some little thing that says, sticker or tag that says this is?
There should.
There should be.
Yeah. And the thing is that from the industry side, where I'm a member of the American Gem Trade Association, and we have to disclose to anybody that we're selling to, we have to give a full disclosure on any of the treatment processes on any of the gemstones that we sell. For example, emeralds are all routinely oiled to enhance any imperfections in the stone. Sapphires are routinely heated to enhance the color and clarity of the stone. Rubies the same way. So there are a lot of gem treatments that that is really coming out of the closet and making sure that the consumer is aware of that.
So are you self-regulated then? Is that what you're saying?
We are.
I mean,
We are.
Always it doesn't sound like the government's coming in and saying, okay.
No, but we want to make sure that
need
we're
the
working.
label.
Yeah, but we do work with the government on that.
Okay.
That there's a guidelines that are set up that as a trade organization, we follow guidelines that help ensure that when we sell to the jewelers, they're as knowledgeable on any enhancement processes so that they can disclose that to their consumer.
Okay, got it.
And there was one thing I wanted to close with, and that was that it's pretty amazing that, you know, we get a little glimpse here of, you know, these gems from certain areas, the gold, how jewelry's made, but it's a pretty amazing thing to think that when you walk into a jewelry store and you look at the jewelry that's in the showcases, it's a supermarket there. But to think of where these things came from, it's pretty amazing to think that that ring with the ruby in it and diamonds in it, well, the ruby could have been mined in Burma, smuggled to Thailand, and cut in Sri Lanka, and, you know, brought to the United States. And the diamonds are mined in Australia, but cut in India, and it ends up in a ring from the gold that we got out of South Africa originally, but, you know, it ends up in a ring in a jewelry store that we just happened to walk down to the town square here and buy a ring, and here it is. I mean, it's very easy for somebody to get all these precious gems and minerals from around the world right at the end of your block. So it's pretty amazing trade and business to be in.
Yeah, I bet. Fun.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. It's been fun hearing all these things, and
Well, thank you.
you're right here in Fairfield. Which is interesting in itself, and that you're conducting this business right here in Fairfield. Thank you
Well,
for
thank
doing
you.
that.
Thanks for
living
sharing
in
all that
Fairfield.
with us. It was fun, and
My pleasure.
We hope that we have helped educate the community about gems and pearls and nature.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You're welcome.